Good morning, everybody. We're thankful that you've joined us for another episode of Walk in Wisdom. No, I'm just kidding. But as we study, we're really glad that you've decided to join with us. And I'm glad that we get to hear from Pastor Dave and Pastor Theron. And so we're going to just kind of continue in our study. I know we kind of went out of order this week, but today we're actually going to go back to Proverbs chapter 5 since we skipped that one. And really bring to you from Proverbs chapter 5 a good comparison of what God brings when we listen to His wisdom versus what the world brings when we listen to the world's wisdom. One thing I want to let you know we're really excited about, we have Mark Lester is actually over in the children's building right now putting down laminate in our children's check-in area. And so once you're in, you may have seen the check-in stations that we have that are new, but it's going to be a completely new room once they are done in there. And so we're really excited about that. Just kind of wanted to give you that update as well. So if you turn to Proverbs chapter 5, we're going to look at this chapter and what God says once again about our walk in wisdom. Look at verse number 1. He says, "My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion, and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drop honey, and her speech is smoother than oil, but the end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword." So he begins here by comparing two different types of communication, two different types of knowledge, two different types of wisdom. And God says, hey, listen to me because I bring discretion, I bring discernment, I bring understanding, I bring knowledge. And he goes on and says, hey, be careful of the knowledge that are the words that this woman says. Why? Because they drip like honey. They're smoother than oil. Initially, it may seem right. It may seem sweet, but the end is as bitter as wormwood and sharp as a two-edged sword. We really get into this idea of flattery here, right? Because this flattery that she brings really deceives and convinces initially, but the end of that, the end is bitter. The end is as a two-edged sword. It really makes me think about our influences that we have in our life. The people that we allow to interact with us, the people that we take advice from, that we obtain knowledge from. Why? Because initially, those influences that we allow, they may seem good. They may even convince us that they are good, but the end of it is far from anything that's good. What we see here is that those who hear, that listen for God's leading, that allow for God's teaching to influence and impact their lives, have an end that is far greater than the one who is deceived by flattery, who is deceived by things that seem good initially, but their end is far from it. Let's keep reading. Verse number 5, her feet go down to death, her steps follow to the path of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life, her ways wander, and she does not know it. And now, O sons, listen to me, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Why? What else should you do? Keep your way far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless. The next thing that he says is, first, don't listen to her, but then also don't even get close to her. He says, keep your way far from her and do not go near to the door of her house. There's the rule of proximity is that we become like the people that we surround ourselves with. And even if we're not intentional about interacting and learning from someone, just being close to them, they will rub off on you. And so what we see here is he's saying, look, don't listen to the words of the Lord. Listen to the words of God. Listen to the words of wisdom that I'm giving you. Don't listen to the wisdom and words of people that flatter, people that it seems good initially. And then he says, hey, take it even a step further and stay away. Don't interact with, don't allow yourself to be in a position where you become vulnerable and influenced by those that would attempt to get you to do things that maybe you shouldn't. Keep your way far away from her. Do not go near to the door of her house. Why? Lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless, lest strangers take their fill of your strength and your labors go down to the house of a foreigner. Basically, he's saying you're going to lose everything. Those things that you've worked hard for, those things that you've attempted to gather, you're going to lose them because you're allowing their influence into your life. Verse 11, he says, at the end of your life you groan when your flesh and body are consumed, and you say, how I hated discipline, and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. He's saying, you're going to get to the end of your life, and you're going to wonder, why didn't I listen to my teachers? Why didn't I listen to those that were attempting to bring life into me? But he says, rather, in verse number 15, drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? Let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. He just talked about how those people would take everything that he had, their honor, they would take your honor, they would take your riches. But he's saying, look, keep them for yourself. Keep them for yourself. Don't give them the things that you've worked hard for. Keep those. Verse 17, let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always with your love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman, and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline, and because of his great folly, he is led astray. Look, as we dive into what it means to be wise, here he says, don't allow something that is sparkling. What's the phrase? Not all that glitters is gold. To recognize, to be have ears that are open for wisdom, and that we be content with, we be satisfied with the things that we have, be satisfied with what God has given us and the knowledge that He has imparted to us. Why? Because if we don't, if we succumb to the flattery of the world, to the flattery of the forbidden woman, what we see is that the honor that was once ours is no longer ours. The years that we've worked go to those who are merciless. Those who are strangers take your strength, and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. Those all seem like things that I don't want. Right? My goal in life, my goal is to seek for wisdom, to seek for what God has for me, and to be content with what He gives me. Not to succumb to the flattery of the world and to try to gain things that were never meant for me. Guys, I hope that as we go through the study of wisdom, that you would seek for wisdom in your life that will enlighten your path, that will show you the way, that you'll have wisdom over worry. That as we pursue wisdom, it would lead us away from the flattery of the world and lead us to the path that God has set for us. I'm so excited that we have the opportunity to continue. And as we go into tomorrow, we'll hear again from Pastor Dave about what wisdom is, how as we walk in wisdom, what does that mean in our life? And I pray that as today we go into it, we would realize that there's a huge difference between what the world offers and what God offers, and what we allow ourselves to be close to, what we listen to, will influence and impact our lives. I pray that as you go through your day, that we'll listen to the wisdom that God has to offer rather than the wisdom that the world attempts to give us.